right emotions. We take all of our actions from emotion. If you're feeling determined, if you're feeling focused, if you have belief in yourself during this time, especially if you do not know how to create that emotional mastery where you can like realign yourself every morning when you get a bunch of no's, or you can kind of get back on track. If you don't have those tools, you're not going to be successful in business.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So mainly the emotionals are about managing your own emotions. Do you talk to them about managing, other people's emotions too, like dealing with different types of people who are in different emotional states at all times, or?
Really great question. I actually believe that we get in trouble when we're trying to control anyone else's thoughts, feelings, actions, or results. I say that, of course, if you're focused on your own thoughts, feelings, actions, and results, and you're showing up the way that you want to show up, regardless of how anyone else is behaving, you're going to get a much better result in terms of their emotional state and your emotional state than when you actually try and control other people. Because we can't control the humans. We think we can, but we get in a lot of trouble when it kind of will show up in terms of people pleasing, which is never great when you're really saying yes to someone else at the expense of yourself. And then usually they're not happy anyway. And that's really, I find that a lot with my clients. They come in and they're people pleasers, or the opposite, where they feel like they are showing up and they feel like, I need to sell, and they're not really listening in terms of what, they're not really listening in terms of service. But you can serve people in understanding that it's coming from your own thoughts and feelings. And if someone says no, when you are coming from the right intention of service, it feels so much better, and you have no icky feelings, which people are constantly telling me they're concerned about, that holds them back, because in that case, when they're feeling icky, it's because they're worried about what someone else is thinking about them. And then in turn, we're missing the focus on the value and on how you can really powerfully help them and lean in.
Okay. That's interesting. When you were talking about when someone says no, feeling, if you come from a place of service and it feels okay versus if you were just trying to sell, is that because like when you're just trying to sell, it feels like they're rejecting you and it's like a win versus lose kind of thing versus?
Yeah, well, when you have the right intention and you are focused on the value that you have to offer, it's like, I love the analogy of, if you had the cure to cancer and you really understood the value of the cure to cancer, and you see someone who is telling you that they have cancer, they have a need that you have the solution to, you're explaining to them, you're like, oh my gosh, you don't understand, I have the cure to cancer. And they're like, oh, it's a little bit too expensive for me right now. Or like, I don't know, I don't really have the time. It's just not a priority for me. And you're like, listen, I don't think you understand. Let me just try and explain it in a better way. I have the cure to cancer, right? And at the end of the day, you really don't feel bad leaning into explaining this to someone, because you are so focused on the value that you have to offer, and you're very clear about it. Now, at the end of the day, there are going to be some people that don't match with you, but I have a very easy time leaning in and asking more questions when someone says no, and when someone tells me either it's the price or it is the time commitment, or it's not a priority, because I've asked enough questions up until that point, not focused on me, focused on this idea of service, asking to understand, do we really have a match here? Do they have needs that I have a solution for? And if you're doing that due diligence and you're doing that work, that is coming from a place of service, because you know that you can't serve someone if you don't know the ways that they need to be served, right? If you don't really understand their needs. So when people go in to sell, they go in with the idea of like, I'm going to sell this person no matter what, and they're not really listening. And so that cannot possibly be service. Even if they tell you no, doesn't mean that you cannot continue to dig deeper with them and figure out like, is this really something that's true, or is it coming from a scarcity mindset, or whatever the real reason is. You can always do that from a great place when you feel like, at the end of the day, I also always have my free value that I'm adding, in terms of the podcast and everything. So if I'm offering them my services and it really, really just, the timing isn't right, or they're just not ready to get there yet, which you can't control. Of course, I'm not trying to control anyone else's thoughts or feelings about it. I'm trying to help them see. I will say, hey, listen, in the meantime, if you really do have this need, I want you to check out episode 4 of my podcast, which is called Resilient. And I know that you mentioned that you're not feeling like you can bounce back right now. I think it'll really help you. And then I'll check in a little bit later because I know I have the cure for cancer and they've got a cancer in their brain, right?
Yeah. Can I ask you this?